Howdy, Desert Boy here. So we've been talking about, kind of this, I've been sharing with you remember these are my opinions, my thoughts, my experience about being on this path of not just concealed carry, but how I started out and got to where I'm at, doing firearms and things, but things I thought about along the way, weapons choices, purpose of use, all these different things. So we'll kind of review that. I want to make sure you're always in compliance with your local, state, and federal firearms laws, ordinances, CCW permitting, training, hunting rules, whatever. You want to make sure you're in compliance. So with that out of the way, what's always the first thing that we want to do? First thing is always safety. You want to make sure you understand all the basic rules of firearms. You want to make sure that you get training. That's what I would recommend. The NRA has some great courses, and there's local instructors around. I get training. Sometimes you're required to have training for your permits. Sometimes you get an opportunity, like I did, to go to a 4-day training course, and they don't only teach you about that. They teach you about the responsibilities and the mindset, and conflict avoidance, and what happens if there's a shooting, and what you're liable for, and what's the what do they call that? Anyway, just the concept of the responsibilities involved with all these different things. So safety is always first. Next, you always want to make sure that you think through about what's your whole plan. What do you want to have firearms for? You going to the range? Is it just a hobby, or are you going to use it for home defense? Or are you going to pursue being able to carry if you're allowed to do that where you reside at? In order to do that, whenever in any event, you're going to have to understand the safe, what they call the manual of arms, or the use of that particular firearm. You need to understand that thoroughly, especially all the safety aspects, loading, unloading, and so forth. And you're going to need to practice, because that's going to develop your skill set. And you're going to find out which type of things work better for you and which things don't. And that will drive, along with your purpose of use, in a direction of maybe what your selection of firearm is. And we'll talk about that. What about the support for it? Is there support for that one? Are there holsters? Is there warranty service? Things like that. Then if you make the decision to do concealment, once again, more training or permitting process, and you want to make sure what's the environment that I'm going to be carrying in, Is it a rural environment? Is it a more neighborhood environment? Is it the city? Am I going to go there sometime? What are the factors that are going to influence my choice for selection for everyday carry? And everybody's going to have their own path. I've tried to share a little bit about mine. Ammo selection. You want to make sure you have ammunition that's the correct for whatever environment that you're in. The time of day, things like that. You want to also make sure that, you find a method of carry that works well for you. Some people like shoulder holsters, some people like outside the waistband, inside the waistband, pocket carry, things like that. You want to make sure you have a secure place, somewhere that you can lock up your firearms, because you want to make sure you protect them from anybody that you might get access to it. They're either under your supervision or they're not. And when they're not, they need to be secured. And even when they're under your possession, you're responsible for them, and they need to be secure. So, you need to make sure you know what's going on. Adjustments. What about life changes? What about if you're on crutches? What about if as you age, things change. Sometimes people get different caliber guns. They go down in power. Sometimes they get ones that are easier for them to rack. I didn't talk about that a lot. Remember what I said about firearm selection. If you got somebody that's going out there and saying, oh, this is the one you got to have, and so forth, you need to find what works for you, because you're the one that's going to be responsible for that. As a lot of people have said, every bullet that leaves that gun has a legal responsibility attached to it. Some people say there's a lawyer attached to it, but you need to remember that you need to be able to be proficient and understand all those things and find the things that work best for you. Understanding permitting, carrying, if you're traveling, what's the rules for that? Where can you carry? Where can you not carry? Even where you're at, Just like when you go to the range, there's range rules, There's basic things about when you have a ceasefire and things. So just make sure that you've got all those kind of things in your kind of in your little carry-on, I guess, of life, and try to make sure that that you can have the best experience you can if you decide that you want to do firearms as a hobby. Now, I've approached this mostly from the support of everyday carry, which isn't so much with long guns and things. That's a whole nother area, right? And I've tried to share with you some things that have worked for me. But remember, once again, you need to go out, talk to your friends, your experts, get training. That's the best way to make those decisions. If you can go to a range that has rentals, a lot of times, there was one like that in Nevada. I had my range membership included rentals, so I could try out different things, so that's awful handy too. So once again, it can be a great hobby. It can be something that can be very helpful for protecting your family. You might like to enjoy to go hunting. You might like to enjoy competing. But just make it the best experience and the most safe experience you can for yourself. So once again, hopefully you found some of this information helpful. I know it's a bunch of different videos. I don't know if anybody will ever watch them. But if they do, hopefully that'll be something that will be good that comes out of them. So as Desert Boy always says, be safe out there, whatever you're doing. And if you like this video and all these videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye now.